I didn't crash a car, I didn't break a rule, and I didn't touch anyone else's property yet. I was nearly forced to pay thousands of dollars, tear up my own driveway, and live under constant threat of fines, all because the president of my homeowners association slid her SUV into my garage during an ice storm. What started with a single sound metal scraping on ice turned into months of legal pressure, retaliation, and power abuse that I never saw coming. And by the time it ended, the person who tried to crush me under HOA authority was the one who lost everything. I was at home that morning, coffee in hand, laptop already open, watching the news warn people to stay off the roads. The ice storm had locked our town down for days, thick glassy sheets coating every street, every driveway, every curb. I had nowhere to go, nothing urgent to do, and honestly I felt lucky to be warm inside while the world outside froze solid. Then I heard a sharp screech, tires sliding, followed by a deep hollow thud that shook the walls. Not a small bump, not a scrape, a full heavy impact. I already knew something was wrong before I even reached the window. At the bottom of my driveway sat a silver SUV, angled awkwardly, its front bumper pressed into my garage door. The street above my house slopes slightly downhill, and on a normal day it's harmless, but with ice it turns into a slide. And I recognized the car instantly. It belonged to Linda Parker, the president of the Silverwood Estates Homeowners Association. I pulled on my coat, stepped carefully outside, and felt the ice shift under my boots. Linda opened her door, stepped out like she was exiting a boardroom instead of a crashed vehicle, and looked straight at me. "Call a tow truck," she said. No apology, no acknowledgement of my garage. I looked from her car to the dent in my door, then back at her. "Are you okay?" I asked. She waved it off. "I'm fine. The city should be ashamed of these roads." Then she said the words that flipped a switch in my head. "This happened because your driveway is unsafe." I actually paused just to be sure I heard her correctly. "My driveway," I said. "Yes," she replied, already nodding to herself. "It's sloped improperly. I'll need you to cover the towing." That was the first moment I realized this wasn't going to be a normal interaction. This wasn't a neighbor embarrassed about an accident. This was someone already building a case out loud. I told her I'd call a tow truck, but that we'd also need to exchange insurance information. She frowned. "This was an act of God," she said. "The storm caused it." I didn't argue right there. The ice, the cold, the shock, it all piled up. The towing company said they'd be hours. Linda waited inside my house, criticizing my mailbox, my living room, my lawn, like she was conducting an inspection instead of sitting in the home her car had just damaged. When the tow truck finally arrived and pulled her SUV free, the damage was obvious. My garage door was bent, scraped, and cracked. Her bumper had a scratch. "That'll be $250, the driver said. Linda turned to me. "You'll be paying that." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "No," I said, "I won't." Her eyes hardened. "We'll see about that." 3 days later, I opened my mailbox and found an official envelope from the Homeowners Association. Inside were violation notices, multiple, all dated after the accident. Rust on my mailbox, grass too long during winter, driveway slope deemed hazardous, and a demand for reimbursement for the towing fee. Each line ended with a deadline. Each deadline ended with a fine. That was when the pressure started to sink in. Not panic pressure, because HOA fines are real. They don't need permission, and they don't ask twice. For the first time, I felt cornered. Not because I'd done something wrong, but because someone with authority had decided I was a target. And for a brief moment, standing in my kitchen with that letter shaking in my hand, I understood why people give in, why they just pay, why they keep their heads down. But then something else kicked in: frustration, maybe pride, maybe just exhaustion at being pushed. I called a lawyer. Daniel Carter specialized in HOA disputes. He listened quietly, asked a few sharp questions, then leaned back and said, "This is retaliation." That word changed everything. Not a misunderstanding, not a disagreement. Retaliation. We documented everything. Photos, weather reports, building records proving my driveway was original and compliant. Daniel sent a formal response denying every violation and filed an insurance claim against Linda for the garage damage. The Homeowners Association called an emergency meeting. Residents showed up more than usual, and one by one they spoke. A man fined for a wreath. A woman threatened over sidewalk chalk. A couple cited for paint that had been approved years earlier. The pattern was impossible to ignore. At the hearing, Linda tried to maintain control, but the questions came faster than she could deflect. Why now? Why no previous violations? Why demand towing reimbursement? Then Daniel asked her directly, "Did your vehicle slide into my client's garage?" "Yes." "And did you issue violations immediately afterward?" "Yes." That was the moment the room shifted. The board voted. The violations were dismissed. Linda was removed as president of the Homeowners Association. She didn't look at me when she left. The insurance check arrived weeks later. My garage was repaired, and the fines vanished. The story ended there, not with celebration, not with closure, but with quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when someone finally loses the power they abused. And the lesson was simple. Authority without accountability always collapses. For a while after that, things didn't explode or resolve cleanly, they just stayed tense. The kind of tension you feel when you walk to your mailbox, slowly half expecting another envelope with official letterhead inside. Nothing dramatic happened, but nothing felt settled either. Linda didn't disappear right away. She stopped sending notices herself, but she hovered emails copied to the board, vague warnings about future compliance reviews, casual mentions of bylaws during community threads, not outright attacks, just reminders that she was still there. And I'll be honest, that stretch wore me down more than the confrontation ever did. There's something exhausting about waiting for the next move when you know someone is looking for leverage. I didn't doubt the facts, I didn't doubt the evidence, but the constant pressure was real. One afternoon, I came home and saw a city inspection notice taped to my door. No explanation, no details. Just a scheduled visit regarding possible unpermitted modifications. I didn't need to guess who filed it. The inspector showed up 3 days later, clipboard in hand, professional and polite. He measured the driveway, checked drainage, inspected the concrete. After 20 minutes, he straightened up and said, "This is original construction, fully compliant." I nodded. He paused, lowered his voice slightly, and added, "You're not the first complaint from your neighborhood this month. Same source." That was the moment I stopped feeling defensive and started feeling done. Daniel filed one more motion this time, naming Linda personally. Harassment, abuse of authority, pattern of retaliatory behavior. She fought it at first, claimed protection under her role with the Homeowners Association, said she was just enforcing standards. The judge didn't buy it. During the hearing, Linda was asked simple questions, yes or no. Did your vehicle slide into his property? Yes. Did you demand he pay for the tow? Yes. Did you issue multiple violations afterward? Yes. Each answer landed heavier than the last. No speeches, no raised voices, just facts stacking up until there was nowhere left to stand. A settlement was offered. Legal fees covered. All claims dropped. And one final condition added at the end, her immediate resignation from the HOA board. She agreed. No apology worth remembering. No dramatic exit, just paperwork signatures and silence. The next month felt different. Board emails sounded human. Rules were clarified. Violation notices required multiple approvals. And my driveway, the same stretch of concrete that had somehow become dangerous overnight, sat exactly as it always had. I never wanted to be the guy who fought the HOA. I just didn't want to be bullied into paying for someone else's mistake. And maybe that's the real takeaway. Most people aren't looking for a fight, but when power is used to punish instead of protect, pushing back becomes the only reasonable option. Because once someone learns they can't scare you into compliance, everything changes. After Linda resigned, the neighborhood didn't suddenly turn cheerful or celebratory. It just became quieter in a way I hadn't realized I was missing. No more mass emails written in stiff legal language, no more threats hidden behind phrases like pure HOA guidelines, just silence, and then normal conversations again. I noticed it first on the Saturday morning. I was outside checking the garage door repair, running my hand along the new panel, when my neighbor across the street waved. Not the cautious, polite wave, the relaxed one. The kind people use when they're not worried about who's watching. A week later, another board email came through. Short, clear, no warnings, no fines, no ultimatums. Just a reminder about trash pickup delays due to weather. That's when it hit me, the fear was gone. For months, everyone had been operating like they were under surveillance, measuring their grass twice, pulling decorations down early, avoiding even harmless changes because it wasn't worth the risk. Linda hadn't just enforced rules, she'd trained people to anticipate punishment. And once that pressure disappeared, the community didn't become chaotic. It became normal. I didn't suddenly feel victorious or proud. Mostly, I felt tired. Tired in that deep, quiet way you feel after holding your ground longer than you expected to. Every now and then, I'd replay that first morning in my head, the sound of the crash. Her voice telling me I'd pay for it, the way she stood in my driveway already planning consequences. If I'd agreed, if I'd written the check, if I'd stayed silent, none of this would have happened. She would have stayed in power. The next person would have been targeted, and the rules would have kept tightening inch by inch until compliance was automatic. That realization didn't feel dramatic, it felt unsettling. People like Linda don't usually collapse under confrontation. They rely on fatigue, on the assumption that most people won't push back because it's easier not to. And most of the time, they're right. The only reason this ended differently is because I stopped treating it like a misunderstanding and started treating it like what it was: a misuse of authority. Not emotional, not personal, just documented, factual, and undeniable. I still live in the same house. The driveway hasn't changed. The mailbox was replaced not because I had to, but because I chose to. And every time I pull into my garage now, there's a small sense of calm that wasn't there before. Not relief, not satisfaction, just the absence of pressure. Linda moved shortly after everything finalized. No forwarding message, no goodbye email, just gone. And the space she left behind closed up like it had never been there at all. The strange thing is, I don't think she ever expected resistance. I think she assumed authority was enough, that people would bend before they pushed, that rules once spoken became truth. But authority only works when people believe it's legitimate. The moment it's exposed as personal, it starts to crack. And sometimes all it takes is one driveway, one refusal, one person saying, "No, that's not how this works." Because power doesn't disappear when it's challenged. It disappears when it's proven empty.